We got 4. We're needing 3 more people. Call the meeting to order. I have several members that are in Senate Judiciary Committee. Senator Ginn is presenting the bill. Senator Gooch is over there. Senator Dolezal's there. And it seemed like I had at least one other committee members over there. They'll join us shortly, so we'll go ahead and begin. We'll call Senate Bill 34. Senator Huffstetler, would you can take your choice. You can take the podium or the witness chair here. All righty. If you'll just explain it to us, committee members, you have quite a bit of information in your folder. If you want to take your time looking through some of this, we're not voting today, but it's a lot of very educational materials been provided to us. Senator Huffstetler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm reading from LC 550460S, and I want to talk about the data centers a little bit because in my district we have Switch building there, a great client, Microsoft, Switch in Bartow County, Microsoft in Floyd County, and we just announced a massive data center across from our Lowe's Distribution Center yesterday in Rome that will be 2 million square feet. So I want to be clear. I support data centers coming to Georgia, even though they don't hire many workers and have much of a impact on state taxes. They can be a significant contributor to property taxes, and we certainly got some issues there we need some help on. They usually don't want to be seen. They have some good landscaping, can be often invisible to the neighborhood, but they do require considerable resources, and I certainly want them to pay their share of the resources they require. And the ones I've talked to say they want to pay their share of the resources. And perhaps the PSC and I were on similar tracks. I had legislation drafted before session. We did give it to their staff. They actually suggested some changes to the legislation, and I was agreeable to the changes they gave me at that time.
Yes, Senator.
And then in a meeting in January, I believe it was January 16th or so, they moved an item up a week and went ahead and adopted a rule that would allow Georgia Power to recover costs from data centers related to transmission, distribution. I think it also allows for multi-year guarantees. I'll talk later about some of the things that I think we need to tighten up on that, but I was certainly glad to see some progress made. You know, consumers here have received 6 rate increases in less than 2 years. Since 2011, they've been paying a surcharge, a charge that was supposed to end at the time in 2017, but with construction delays, it's just now ending. And on the Plant Vogels, and the new units added 7.5% capacity to Georgia Power's generation. But then we were told just a couple of these data centers were going to use the power that the consumers had paid for since 2011, and actually they'll continue to pay for it because it's built into their base charges for the next 60 years. So this has caused our residential bills to now be some of the highest in the country. And of course, more data centers are being built, and Georgia Power is constructing more generation facilities, transmission line substations. And I know there's some costs being paid right now, so I don't want to say that it's not being done. But this bill is not intended to change any revenue coming into Georgia Power. But it would shift the cost to those who are consuming the additional electricity. And in my discussion with the data centers, they've told me they do want to pay the cost they've brought on. I think we all agree that consumers can't continue to absorb cost in an unfair proportion. And I think the ruling, while it maybe needs a little bit further that the PSC did, is also headed in that direction. My understanding, and I'm meeting with them, I'd given them my bill in the past. I'm meeting with them next week. My understanding is they're going to wait on testifying today and wait till after we meet and hold their comments to a later time.
You're talking about the Public Service
The Public
Commission?
Service
Okay.
Commission, yes.
All right.
And so we continue to work on this issue. I think they've got people now that certainly understand they can't keep, putting these costs on, and have made some moves to shift them already. So this bill will align cost with usage and increase demand. I hope we can all agree to protect our consumers from costs that should be borne by others. I've got some other stuff for closing, but trying to keep it short. I'll go ahead and end that right now and appreciate the committee's consideration. Can answer any questions you may have.
Any members have questions for Chairman Huffstetler at this time, or you want to wait till after the testimony? I've got 4 or 5 people signed up. All right, I don't see any questions now. Oh, I recognize Senator Brass.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Is this specific to Georgia Power?
This is, it's because working with the PSC, they're the ones that regulate Georgia Power, not the EMCs.
Okay.
And so this is specific to them.
But
correct.
Georgia Power, just to be clear, they're not the only energy providers for data
Absolutely.
centers, correct?
We've got a lot of others that do this, yeah.
Okay.
And this, again, they deal with the PSC, and I've worked with the PSC, and the PSC doesn't regulate the others, to my understanding.
Do we know what the other, a follow-up if you allow, Mr.
Go
Chairman.
right ahead.
Do we know how those costs are on the other entities, how they pass those costs on to the data?
I don't know,
is there-
but I do understand that, that probably all of them, and I think maybe Georgia Power now even, are looking at cost and getting some upfront cost and trying to get some guarantees in there. I think they're all, I kind of think we're all in agreement on this in a lot of ways. It's just making sure that we follow through on this, that they need to put the cost on those that are responsible, because this industry is unique because it has incredible energy costs, and that's the impetus for it.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Are you intentionally excluding the EMCs from the scope of this law, and if so, why? Well,
this particular dealt more with the PSC and not with the EMCs, and what their arrangement is with them. So, and I'll be honest, I'm not an expert on all the EMCs around the state and what they do. So I was looking at what we regulate in our Public Service Commission in this bill.
Okay. Well, all right. Let's see what the general public has to say about this. I have Bob Sherrier from SELC. If you'll come up, please, Bob. Introduce yourself and tell us who you're with and where you stand on this bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Bob Sherrier. I'm a lawyer with the Southern Environmental Law Center here in Atlanta, and I focus on energy policy in Georgia. And we support Senate Bill 34. But we've been following this issue very closely, and even filed a motion in the PSC ruling that happened a couple weeks ago. And I would like to explain why that policy adopted then should be strengthened by this law, and why I think so. But to step back, like for a sense of scale, and I'll focus on Georgia Power here because, to your question, we have much less information about what's going on with the EMCs and how they're charging their customers, how much power the data centers that are going to them require. I can only see information that's filed with the Public Service Commission, so I'll focus on them. But we'll be very interested to have more transparency into what's going on with the EMCs and munis here, because it's a statewide issue. So the peak energy usage at any one point in time in a year for Georgia Power System is in the 15 to 17,000 megawatt range. They haven't ever gone above 18,000 megawatts or 18 gigawatts to date. Plant Vogtle units 3 and 4 are about 2,000 megawatts, 2 gigawatts. One hyperscale data center can be over 1,000 megawatts of power. So what we're talking about is a huge new demand on our energy and our electric grid. Some of the projections going forward expect that we might get close to doubling the amount of power that we need in this state in the next couple years. The speed and the likelihood of that will be a topic of discussion for sure during the integrated resource plan process across the street. But the scale of the impacts is massive regardless. We've got to build new transmission lines and power plants, distribution lines, substations. There's going to be increased fuel costs. It's going to be extremely expensive to bring all of these data centers onto the grid. And it's the magnitude of the costs and these impacts, which is why data centers are a major concern and why they should be singled out for additional protections. Now, what the Public Service Commission did 2 weeks ago today is this, and they deserve credit for enacting new protections for bill payers. They authorized Georgia Power to use new contracting tools so that when Georgia Power signs a contract for service with a new data center, they can now make that contract for a longer term. Before 2 weeks ago, the maximum amount of contract length was 5 years. Now they can go longer than that. They could also impose things like minimum billing requirements. There are new kinds of contract terms that they can use now that they couldn't just over 2 weeks ago. And these are necessary not only because of the scale of the costs, but also because if a data center comes and gets an agreement, they could be paying off, Georgia Power could be anticipating them to pay off their costs over 30 years. Well, what if they leave in year 12? What if the conditions change and the AI requires less? You know, anything could happen in the next 30 years that could change the demand and the location here. And because the costs are so great, that's why new action is being taken. The commission required Georgia Power to use these terms, the new contract terms, to prevent cost shift from existing customers to the data centers, to prevent subsidies to the data centers. The commission required these contracts to be submitted for review within 30 days of being signed. These things allow Georgia Power to recover more spent money that they identify as required to serve that customer, and it does give the commission more insight into what these individual contracts look like, because for many of these, they are individually negotiated contracts. And that's great. We do applaud that. But as Commission Chairman Shaw said just Tuesday to the House committees he spoke to, he said it was a great step, but a first step, and we do agree with that. So what the new commission policy doesn't answer is this, and I do think that this bill gets at this question. Which costs are we talking about? Which costs can Georgia Power now demand from the data centers? This has not been answered with any clarity yet. And the old way of dividing up the costs to serve large customers is likely to lead to subsidization of data centers unless something changes.
Subsidization by who? Taxpayers, government, or the residential consumer?
Existing bill payers, residential, small commercial, industrial. The example that I'll use here for one reason why that is transmission lines. And it comes from sort of the practical way that we build the system and plan for the system is that it's designed to serve electricity to everybody. So when the transmission system is planned, when power plants are being weighed in the balance, the operation of the whole grid is generally the problem that's being solved for. So you get a computer model and you put inputs into it of here's where the generators are, how much they're producing, here's where the loads are, the lines are, all that. And you run different scenarios and you see which problems arise, where they light up. And then you solve for those problems. And historically, if a solution to a transmission problem provides benefits to more than one customer, to more than a single customer, that is referred to by Georgia Power as an upstream cost. And that is split among everybody. Residents, small businesses, churches, everybody pays for upstream costs. And where do you draw that line with this magnitude of costs is a significant issue and has not been clarified. So I guess it comes down to this. Did residents cause Georgia Power to file an emergency IRP a year ago and ask to spend billions of dollars to build new power plants? They didn't. Is it because of small businesses do they require miles and miles of new expensive transmission lines? No. I think that this bill sets an appropriate standard for making sure that they don't have to pay for those costs. And it says if the data centers cause them, they should pay for them. Existing customers shouldn't. I support the bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions from any committee members? Right. I'm going to recognize Senator Brass for a question or two. If you'll hold on, you go.
Yep.
You don't have to ask me between questions. Go ahead and finish your thoughts.
Fair enough. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. All right, so I know my colleague's that brought the legislation is not an expert in this, as he's already stated, and I'm going to present a bill later that I'm not an expert in either, and I didn't write. So I'm in full transparency saying that before I ask you these questions.
Yeah.
Did you, or did what are y'all called, SELC or whatever?
SELC, yeah.
Did y'all write this legislation?
No.
Okay. Is this legislation being done in other states that you're aware of?
A number of states are looking at this issue. Virginia comes to mind, that has taken a number of different bills have come up there. I don't know that any have been the exact same standard, but it's all with the same principle that the chairman alluded to, which is pay their fair share. And how do you get there is the question.
Okay. Do you think there are a need for data centers in our state
Yes.
and really for our economy as a whole? I mean, does your SELC, do y'all see value in the data centers as a whole?
Sure.
Okay. Now I'm just trying to, I'm kind of looking at y'all's website and I'm just trying to figure out like what, as far as who's paying what does that have to do with, how does that affect the environment and what y'all do for your mission at SELC?
Yes, so we work on issues related to the clean energy transition, but we want that to happen equitably. And so who pays for the costs? And if we're powering these facilities with fuel costs for gas or extending life of coal plants, things like that directly implicate our mission, which is also to reduce the energy burden.
Okay. And the only reason I'm asking is I like to know where people are coming from
yeah.
and what angle you're asking your questions and presenting your calls from. So thank you.
Thank you.
If it's okay, you may want to hang around. You might learn something from these other speakers, but we may have further questions for you later. I've got two other bills, and these are complex subject matters, and part of what I'm trying to accomplish today is to educate us as to sort of how this big issue fits in with state missions, and you're a great voice for that. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Next, I have Mr. Aaron Mitchell from Georgia Power.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Thanks for the opportunity to speak. My name is Aaron Mitchell. I'm Vice President of Pricing and Planning for Georgia Power. In that role, I sit in a unique position. My team is responsible for not only the planning 20 years out of what generation capacity is needed to serve our customers across the state, but also how do we transmit that electricity to customers, as well as implementation of renewables, customer programs, energy efficiency, and we bundle that together in an integrated resource plan every 3 years at the Public Service Commission. As well, I have a responsibility for a team that sets pricing and rate development and presents that to the commission. So I'd like to address at a high level, maybe level set on how we do what we do, what state laws require us to operate those two functions, and then address some aspects of this bill and maybe a few comments in response to some statements.
That'd be great, and I'd like to thank your Cracker Jack lobbyists for some of the information they provided us. If you folks will look in your file, this is the 2025 integrated, is it resource plan?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Did you just submit this to the PSC? Is this very recently? I mean, it's 2025 and we're still
We did.
month in. Okay.
January 31st.
All righty.
So that's a triennial process where we file that every 3 years with the commission. It's due at the end of January, and then a 6-month litigated process begins at the commission, where the company will serve up its witnesses for testimony and cross-examination by public service commissioners, as well as public service commission staff. Interveners, then the public can participate in that process and also ask our witnesses questions. And then those interveners also present witnesses. The Public Service Commission then makes a decision in July of this year.
And am I right that part of what you're doing here is forecasting the need for power in the future and your ability to produce and provide it for the Georgia consumers within your territory?
Yes, sir, that's exactly right.
It might help us a little bit in your presentation if you mention what territories Georgia Power has. We also have a map of that here, and the interplay between the EMCs and Georgia Power as on the statewide grid, and how we provide power to people all over our state.
Certainly. Perhaps I can start there. So Georgia law, including the Territorial Act, and I know there was some discussion at the Capitol this week by EMCs and Georgia Power representatives on the Territorial Act, but those laws mandate and define service territories for every utility in the state, including Georgia Power. Within that territory, there is an obligation to serve. Georgia Power is obligated to ensure adequate planning, resource deployment, reliability, as well as it provides for oversight of all those plans and our rates at the Public Service Commission. Just like we talked about just now, Mr. Chairman, the IRP proceeding, there are rate case proceedings as well as fuel case proceedings at the commission. Same time frame, opportunity for public input. So directly after the IRP is filed, we will plan to file a rate case to look at how do we recover the costs that we incur to serve our customers, and the commission will approve how that happens and over what time frame. We serve all but 4 Georgia counties in Georgia Power. Our territories are parts and pieces of counties, just like the EMCs. While we serve different territories among those counties, the Territorial Act provides for a customer choice, a one-time customer choice for customers above a certain size, and that's 900 kilowatts connected. You think of a large grocery store, commercial facility, or manufacturer. Those customers get a one-time choice of their energy provider. That in Georgia is unique. That has been a key component of keeping Georgia competitive and helping, under the oversight and the foresight of the legislature, ensure that utilities and necessities like electricity are at competitive rates to keep Georgia the best place to do business.
Am I right that all of these data centers would fall in that category of competitive choice? They're large enough power consumers
Yes,
to
sir.
have choice. If
Exactly.
you don't have choice, you're stuck in the geographic territories that we carved the state up in the Territorial Service Act.
Yes, sir. That's
So
right.
we made monopolies for each EMC and a monopoly for Georgia Power in their territories.
That's correct.
Okay. But we set that aside if it's a big user, so they have more, I guess you're calling it consumer choice, but more competitive bidding on how much they're going to pay for power. They're not captive to a geographic area.
That's right. And when you think about a business looking for different states to operate, they want the best incentives, they want the best and lowest operating costs, and that one-time choice puts utilities in a position to ensure that we are keeping Georgia competitive while ensuring that we're appropriately setting the rates to recover the costs from those customers that they cause us to incur.
And Georgia Power has regulated all these rate processes you're talking about, the IRP, your rate plans, and you can't just charge without getting approval from PSC.
Absolutely right.
They regulate you, but the EMCs are completely unregulated?
The EMC, I won't speak for the EMCs, but generally in response, the EMCs are regulated by their members.
Okay. Because they're a co-op, they're made up
Yes, sir.
of the consumer.
That's right.
Okay. It's been a while since we've had to deal with these issues, is why I'm getting you to kind of flesh it out for me and my co-committee
That's
members.
great.
All right.
I'll answer any questions
All right.
that you have. I mean, and that's where I wanted to start. So we've established a good foundation there, but three principal points of Georgia law and the Territorial Act are: one, the obligation to serve. We can't choose whether or not to serve a customer if they're in our territory. And so our 20-year plan, as well as our rate proceedings that are filed at the commission, are in recognition of that obligation by law. Secondly is oversight, and we've just hit on that. Every aspect of Georgia Power's business is under the oversight of the Public Service Commission, from the planning, the 20-year plans, on looking at what is the growth in Georgia, what our business is bringing, how does that turn into increased electricity demand, how are we going to meet that demand with generators on the ground or purchased power from others in the market, and then how do we transmit that to customers as well. All that is in that plan, and as you said, Mr. Chairman, none of it can be enacted without approval. And finally, competition we've hit on, I think, and addressed appropriately. One thing I mentioned, and just to underscore, within that competition, it's a long-held practice and more emphatically a principle of how you price electricity, in that the costs to serve the customer must be lower than the revenue that you generate from that customer. Said differently, the price offered will be higher than the costs to serve that customer. It is very complicated, and I understand why the committee may hear some statements that maybe aren't 100% in line with that. But what I'd like to walk through are things that Georgia Power has done to further demonstrate that practice, double down on that through commitments with the Public Service Commission, as well as some recent approvals at the Public Service Commission.
Before you jump in, I'm going to let Senator Dolezal ask you a question real quick.
Yes.
Before we lose this thought.
Could I ask a couple, actually, Mr. Chairman? I just want to make sure
Be
we're
fine.
talking about what we're actually talking about. This chart that is in the packet that, I don't even know who your illustrious lobbyist is, the chairman was talking about, but this essentially is your the process you guys go through,
They'll
I
be
guess.
calling on you soon, don't worry.
You go through an annual process to estimate Georgia's power needs. And you did that in 2022, you did that in 2023, and then you did that in 2025.
Yes,
And
sir.
that's in this chart.
Correct.
So the thing that stands out to me is looking 10 years out, that your estimate 3 years ago for what 35 will be is now 55% higher. That's a massive change for 3 years. Help me understand what's driving that change specifically.
So let's rewind to 2021, 2022. If you recall, economic development wins on behalf of the state and the State Department of Economic Development. There were several significant industrial, auto manufacturing, suppliers to feed that market wins announced for the state. That really kicked off in 2022. As well, you did see some data centers starting to locate in Georgia as well. So it's really the electrification of existing manufacturing facilities, the location of new manufacturing facilities, and then the location of data centers
Can
that
you
has
get
driven
for
that
us of
load.
this 9 megawatt number? Can you get, I don't think, you probably don't have this in your back pocket, but for the next time we talk about this, can you break down for us this unanticipated 9 megawatt number, what the delta there, how much of that is data centers?
Yeah, about 80% of that forecast is data centers.
80% of the change between the forecast from 22 to 25?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. I had another question. I'd actually screenshot this 3 days ago for a different reason, but you guys since 2023 have had 6 rate increases. Is that correct? And according to the screenshot that I took from the AJC, it's $43 a month in increased cost per customer on average, I guess. Is that
I think that's relatively
right?
accurate.
How much of that is related to essentially the CapEx that Senator Huffstetler was talking about for increased power generation specifically for data centers?
Very little, if any.
Okay.
And the largest increase there that you'll note is due to fuel.
Yep.
And I think the committee is aware, but just to point out that fuel is pass-through. The company does not earn on fuel. The fuel to supply our power plants is a direct charge to customers, and that increase was due to world events, the war in Ukraine, natural gas price volatility, things outside of the company's control. Those will be recovered through rates, and then that spike that's captured in that increase will end next year in 2026.
One last question, Mr. Chairman, that's okay. Of these 6 rate increases, how many of them were adjusted, reduced, or in some way, were any of them ever voted down by the PSC? I've heard it's out there in the ether that, oh, well, it's just, there's a cozy relationship, it's a rubber stamp. I've got no evidence for that, but I wonder if you could speak to that, because that is something
Sure.
that I've heard.
Sure, I would disagree with that as well as my teammates who sit on the stand at the commission. I believe Chairman Shaw testified the other day in the EUT and the Resource Management Special Committee. I believe his statement was that the commission has not approved a direct rate increase without modification. And I'll just underscore that is true. From my recollection, standing here today, the commission has either decreased or modified that rate request based on changes to the plan of what the company needs to do to serve customers, or disagreement with certain aspects of what the company has proposed. And that's how that process plays out at the commission.
Fuel you're talking about is coal, gas, natural gas, and nuclear rods, I guess?
Yes, sir.
Okay, continue. We'll try to get you through here.
That's okay.
Yes, Senator Ginn.
Hey, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm not a soothsayer, don't have a crystal ball, but it used to be that a computer the size of this room right here has been replaced by less than what's on my watch. The technology keeps driving things, less power, less consumption, less things there. My biggest concern on where we go and building the infrastructure that for the data centers, what's going on with them, is somebody comes up with a new gadget. We've got some great institutions here in Georgia and all over the world. People are trying to solve that problem.
Right.
When we do, power consumption would fall probably pretty drastically. My concern is if we build all the generation out to that level and transmission system and everything there, what are we going to do with all that power that we've just created and invested in, and how do we protect the consumers here in Georgia on over-investing?
Great question. Three items in response. First, I'm not a data center expert, but it is our job to understand our customers and how they use electricity. And what I understand from the data centers, and as you read in the press, as chip technology continues to advance, the chips get more efficient and more powerful. And so while the area to put computing power may decrease, you can put more computing power in the same area. And so the energy efficiency improvements that we might expect from incandescent bulbs to LEDs is less of a concern for data centers. I'm not saying there won't be any improvements to efficiencies there, but that's our understanding. The second is, while we build our electricity system and generation for the current forecast that Senator showed earlier, we do have mechanisms to change what we are doing in our plan based on market dynamics as they change. I think referenced earlier, we filed a interim IRP update in 2023 to say we need to add generation. That was not an emergency. That is expected and required by commission rules, that as we see changes in forecast, we file those changes with the commission and they approve actions that we will take. And so while that wasn't asked to increase, we also have steps that should materialization of load growth not come, we can select less new generators from RFPs. We can not build the next generator. And so we have pathways to adapt as market conditions adapt.
Okay, go ahead, finish.
Well, the third piece,
Yeah.
germane to this discussion today, is with our pricing and with the new rules and regulation requirements that the commission just approved, we will be locking in customers, large customers, to a contract period. Should that customer not fulfill the full term of that contract, there is collateral required such that they would owe the remainder of the term of costs for that contract, so that other customers are not stuck with or have to bear the brunt of those costs.
Okay. This rule will apply to me too, committee members. We're going to let them finish up before we ask more questions. I'm getting cognizant of our time. It's 4:20 and we
Yes,
got
sir.
several speakers and 3 bills. But those so far so good, because we didn't want to lose our train of thought. So carry on. We'll try to be less interrupting of you.
That's okay. I'll be expeditious. So about 18 months ago, I referenced our 23 IRP update. The company, in looking at costs and costs to serve new customers and ensuring protections for existing customers, the company committed and the commission ordered that the company would provide $2.89 of downward pressure on rates to the typical residential customer as a result of and a benefit of serving new large loads that are coming to our system. That is not a question. As I said, the company has committed to that reduction, and the commission has ordered it. Secondly, in June of last year, late summer, as a result of continued conversations with the Public Service Commission and their staff, the company began development of the rules and regs changes that the senator referenced earlier in presentation of the bill. The development of those changes occurred over late summer. We met with and worked with Public Service Commission staff in the fourth quarter to ensure we were addressing their concerns, and we filed that request for approval of the rules and regs changes in December And as you heard earlier, the commission ordered and approved those in January. I wanted to read one bullet from the order from the commission filed on January 28th, 2025. The company shall exercise their discretion under the rules and regs changes in a manner designed to protect existing customers from bearing any of the costs of adding these large customers. And so hopefully that communicates that the company is under legal order to ensure that these costs to serve new customers are not borne by other customers. It runs counter to our principles of how we price, such that the costs to serve the customers are exceeded by the revenue that that customer pays. And finally, I'll give a quick summary of what those rules and reg changes are. It extends the contract period. 5 years was referenced earlier. That's not entirely accurate. We could extend a few years beyond that. This would take data center contracts to a minimum of 15 years. Again, that's based on the investment in our system to serve that specific facility. Secondly, it requires collateral. Collateral will be required to put up for the minimum payment for the duration of the contract period. What that does is ensure, to Senator Ginn's question a minute ago, should something change in the business plans of some of these customers, all other customers are protected because that collateral will be collected and it will be paid down on the costs that we incurred to serve that customer. And then finally, we'll be establishing minimum bills. While electricity usage may fluctuate, we wanted to ensure that the revenue coming in from these large customers was sufficient to cover our costs. So that minimum bill will be established to ensure that at no time does the costs exceed that revenue from that specific customer. With all that, and not to belabor, and I'll answer any questions you have. Hopefully I've described the companies, how we're regulated, what we're required to do under law, the significant oversight of the commission, how we are implementing the rules and regulations for customers larger than 100 megawatts, all to ensure a protection of all other customers. That plays out at the Public Service Commission, where we are required to present all of our contracts for all of these customers to the commission for review, and should, as the commission staff does routinely, should they have questions or concerns, they reach out to the company. And in fact, this order says that the commission may make additional changes should they see concerns or issues that need to be addressed through how we're contracting with these large customers. The combination of all that has ensured competition in Georgia successfully. Rate making is a complicated thing, but we're not unique. Across the nation, utilities hold those same principles. It would be very unique, if not unheard of, for rate making to be legislated such that any flexibility of the Public Service Commission or the company to adapt to changing market conditions and how we charge rates for these large loads would be subject to approval of the General Assembly, once a year. And so we believe that the tools provided by the laws you've already enacted and under the rules of the Public Service Commission provide us all tools necessary to ensure that we can continue to keep Georgia growing, but protect all customers at the same time.
Do you know how many data centers Georgia Power serves at this time?
Yes, sir. Roughly 60 smaller data centers. On the larger, above 100 megawatts, there are 2 that are in operation currently, 10 that we've contracted with, and then 10 more that have selected Georgia Power to be their service provider.
So when you say the smaller ones, they are below that threshold for the competitive bidding process?
Above the threshold, but below 100 megawatts.
Okay, so they are subject to the competitive bidding?
Yes, sir.
You guys won the bid?
For those, that's right.
Okay. All right, so we're really going into a new frontier. You know, you've had 2 mega data centers so far, and you got 10 more already on the books, and it's the wild, wild west going on as they're exploding in growth, right?
That's right. And
Okay.
there are benefits. The way, we operate a shared system. All of our customers use our system. There is not one single asset that is dedicated to one single customer. That allows us to cost effectively serve all customers, no matter the size, and a requirement that we provide the equal reliability to all those customers. The most efficient load to serve from a utility point of view is a large load. The infrastructure is less. It may be more expensive, but it is less to provide large amounts of electricity to that facility, and they use large amounts of electricity and pay for large amounts of electricity. And so when you look at the density of that usage and the density of the revenue to pay for those bulk system costs, it is beneficial to all other customers. And that is the way that we were able to commit to, and we will provide that $2.89 of benefit to the typical residential customer.
Senator Albers, you're recognized for a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for your presentation. I guess I want to get clarity on one issue. When Chairman Dolezal had asked the question, to what degree did that increases have to do with data centers? I believe you mentioned most of that was the significant economic growth, which I guess increased our demand. My question is, if we take that increased economic growth, which seemingly we continue to have great success with, thankfully, and adding now all of these data centers, even with adding the additional rule PSC made, and certainly this great piece of legislation from Chairman Huffstetler, I mean, we've seen so much rate increases. I mean, we're no longer the bright spot for low energy costs anymore in the South. Where are we going to be at in 5 years in this current trajectory? I'm concerned what our increases have already been. What are they going to be in 5 years from now?
Thanks for the question, Senator. While we have had increases, Georgia Power's rates for the last 30 to 35 years have been 15% or more below the national average. While the costs of goods and services and inflation has caused everything to increase, we have remained at 15% or below or more below the national average. Again, talking. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I've got to follow up on that too. Keep going.
Again, service of large loads allows us to provide benefits to all other customers, as I described in the previous comment.
I've got a map in my office showing, and I'm more concerned about the Southeast than I am necessarily the entire nation. And when you add in all the costs and the fees, right, to make sure what the actual end consumer is paying, because I know sometimes we get caught on kilowatt per hour or something of that nature, but I'm concerned of what the families in my district and everybody else are actually having to pay on their bill at the end of the day. It's showing us significantly higher now than where we were, and now even higher than most everyone around us. And I'm concerned if we're already there, and now we're adding all these data centers, doing anything else, where are they going to be in 5 years from now?
Right. Well, to be clear, customers and the affordability of our product is the first thing on our mind as we're doing this planning. We are cognizant of that. In the Southeast, we enjoy a mild climate, but also a very warm and a very cold climate. And so while we compare rates around the nation, that cents per kilowatt hour, that rate, is the best comparison of apples and apples to adjust for weather and other volumetric influencing type things. We use more electricity in the Southeast than someone in the Midwest. And so that's the reason that you would see volumetrically increased bills in the Southeast.
And I appreciate it. I don't want to belabor it. I would just tell you that I'm not going to speak for everyone here, but I know many of us, and the consumers especially, don't look at one metric. They look at what's on their bill at the end of the day, and that's the challenge I have right now in keeping up. And I realize 45-year high inflation was certainly not the choice nor push of Georgia Power nor anybody else, and we bad policies from Washington drove that. But, well, yes, but
question or
I
speech?
still want to get back to our increase in cost, because if we're increasing cost based on demand, are we causing our own problem? Is our own economic development causing our own problem to consumers and ratepayers?
No, and I apologize if I haven't been clear, but the growth of our system that we are requiring in response to our customers' increased electricity demand will be paid for by these customers that we're incurring the cost to serve. So if we're incurring costs to serve a large customer, that customer is going to pay those costs, not our residential customers or other customers.
We'll spend some time offline. Thank you.
Senator Dolezal for last question, then we'll go to the next
I'm
speaker.
good, Chairman.
You good?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mitchell. Appreciate you
pleasure.
being here, and we will probably hear from you again before this is all over. Maybe
Yes,
not
sir.
today. Thank you for your time. All right, my next speaker is Kara Bender from the Data Center Coalition.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to provide comments on Senate Bill 34. My name is Kara Bunder, and I'm Senior Manager of State Policy at the Data Center Coalition. DCC is the national membership association for the data center industry with 34 leading data center owners and operators, as well as companies that lease large amounts of data center capacity. Many DCC members have facilities or planned development in Georgia. Data centers provide the digital infrastructure that supports many sectors of the 21st century economy, including artificial intelligence, financial services, advanced manufacturing, cybersecurity, healthcare, and other key industries. Georgia is a primary market in the country for the data center and digital infrastructure development, giving the Peach State an important role in maintaining the United States' global competitiveness and national security. According to a forthcoming report from PricewaterhouseCoopers commissioned by DCC, direct employment by the data center industry increased 7% year over year from 28,120 in 2022 to 30,070 in 2023. And from 2022 to 2023, including direct, indirect, and induced effects, the data center industry's total annual employment contribution in Georgia grew from 163,480 jobs to 176,890, representing an 8% increase. As was mentioned earlier, we would like to stress that the data center industry is committed to paying for its full cost of service for electricity. We do not want residential ratepayers subsidizing data center energy use. A recent study out of the largest data center market in Virginia from Virginia's Joint Legislative Audit and Review Commission, in fact, did find that data centers are paying for their full cost of service. And while we understand the intent of this legislation, recent actions by the Public Service Commission will provide tools for utilities to ensure costs by large energy users of 100 megawatts or greater are allocated appropriately and that other ratepayers are not subsidizing these large energy users. Since the PSC has taken action to ensure large load customers bear the cost of their energy use, we encourage the committee to resist advancing legislation that would be duplicative of those efforts being addressed in the regulatory environment, where the rate setting has traditionally taken place, as outlined in detail by the previous witness. The PSC remains the best venue for these important discussions and actions, particularly given their expertise in this space. Thank you for your time, and I welcome any questions.
How many data centers we got in Georgia now?
So there is some variation across the publicly available sources. The Georgia Economic Development website indicates over 50, but some other publicly available resources indicate up to 158.
Why do y'all like Georgia so much? Just because our tax incentive, or what attracts you to our state instead of going to Alabama, Mississippi, South Carolina?
So a number of factors go into the mix whenever our members are considering where they're going to locate. Availability of land is certainly one. Georgia is one of over 30 states that does offer a tax incentive, and this does allow the state to remain competitive when looking at those other states. Of course, other factors that go into this are access to power that's reliable, in addition to access to fiber. Workforce is also a big component of where our members decide to locate as well.
I keep hearing about in other parts of the country the Facebooks and Googles and these big high-tech companies are like 3 Mile Island. You know, they're entering into direct contracts for their own power source, power generation, like a plant. Is that what you're looking to do in Georgia? Like a dedicated source or guarantee?
I think that we're seeing that with certain of our members and in certain projects, but I don't know that I can necessarily speak to saying that that's something that we specifically are looking to do here in Georgia.
So you checked the box that you're speaking against this bill?
Correct.
So what is it about this bill that concerns your industry? Are you trying to avoid paying your share of the generation cost and the distribution cost, or why is this a problem if you are stating that's something you want or plan to do or happy to do?
Sure. And I think it's two main things on that note. One being that we do believe that the Public Service Commission, which again has been handling the oversight of how utilities are handling rates, as the appropriate venue for this to occur. I think the previous witness did a great job outlining all the different tools that are coming out of the recent rules out of the PSC that are going to help protect those residential ratepayers and other smaller load ratepayers. The other part of this is the fact that this singles out data centers while there are a lot of other different economic development projects that are ongoing in the state. Again, this was outlined by the previous witness. Advanced manufacturing is also going to be a big component of large energy demand, those automotive factories that were highlighted earlier. And I believe there was a piece recently in the AJC from one of the commissioners that did discuss a lot of those other economic development projects that are coming to the state and contributing to that energy demand.
Okay. Other questions from committee members? Got one more speaker. Mr. Majority Leader, you're up.
Number 5. Could you give us an indication where we can get a map of all the data centers in Georgia? Do you have a link, or is that available?
I do not have one of those at this time. It's one of those things where we would like to have an accurate map of where any and all of those data centers are, but I do not have a comprehensive map that I can share with you at this
I
time.
imagine the Department of Revenue may have that, but so I may be one of the minority opinions up here. I would love to see more data centers if they're put in the right locations in Georgia. Some of the data centers that I'm reading about are in the billions of dollars to construct. We have counties in Georgia that have less than $1 billion of total tax digest. So one project could literally double the net value of a community's digest. So in my opinion, that's where job creation doesn't matter as much as putting a tax digest in a community that has very little income, very few jobs, but they have a lot of farmland, that's affordable land, it's flat, they have infrastructure, they have broadband now in most of these areas. Transmission lines aren't far from the community, so why aren't we doing more in those smaller rural communities instead of trying to pack them in Atlanta or other metropolitan areas of the state?
I think that's a good question, and I think you do underscore a very good point. Data centers do contribute millions of dollars in state and local taxes, and that's revenue that local leaders can really leverage to fund important community priorities and other quality of life improvements. At the same time, those types of revenue, the revenue that those jurisdictions are seeing, also at the same time that data centers are requiring minimal public services to support their operations and employees. So I do think that you bring up a good point on that, and I think there's some opportunity to explore other locations as well.
Senator Gooch, that's something that I've learned in my prep for this, is that your group's not really touting how much you're paying in property taxes. And General Assembly thinks that you guys are on a free ride because we don't charge you sales taxes. And I don't know, you may be getting property tax abatements as well in certain communities, but you may want to help educate us because you're paying sales tax on that energy as well.
I'll take that as an action item.
I bet you're putting some money into the state coffers. I love your point that, let's say it's a rural county, you're paying them a load of property taxes, but you don't have many employees, so you're not burdening the educational system with more students and more fire, more police. A lot of those government services are not getting stressed by you being there. All right, I don't see any more questions. I appreciate you being here. We're not taking action on the bill today, and we're going to probably need to hear a little bit more You just made yourself the voice of the industry, and so keep in touch with us, okay?
Great. Thank you for the time.
I got one more, and then we got to talk about the alcohol bill, and I'm trying to click us along here. So I've got Jeanette Gayer. Okay. Thank you.
I'm Jeanette Gayer. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, the Director of Environment Georgia. And then today I'm also wearing my hat as the Senior Advisor of Georgia Public Interest Research Group, which is a consumer watchdog. And we just wanted to very quickly stand up and support this legislation. We absolutely do not think that the cost of supplying energy to data centers should be imposed on the environment or on consumers. And also think that's a great thing to legislate. So thank you, Chairman Huffstetler, for bringing this bill. Happy to answer questions, but also happy to be quick.
Consumer side of it, Senator Huffstetler's got taken care of. He's trying to make sure residential consumers and our existing people don't subsidize the power for these data centers.
Agreed.
Tell me about your environmental hat. I'm not catching a connection where this harms our environment at all to build a warehouse, basically, to store a bunch of computers and servers. Is there some environmental concern you have other than power usage?
Well, we did just hear that a lot of the new energy that we will need to supply in our state is coming from data centers. A lot of that new energy will come from power plants that could have a big impact on our environment. It could mean extending the life of coal plants. And I think, well, maybe not. I've certainly talked to several Senate committees about our concerns around coal ash and groundwater contamination, around our concerns of emissions from gas plants. So there's a lot of environmental impacts of the plants that will be required and the transmission lines that will be required to supply these data centers with energy.
Mostly byproducts of generating more electricity.
Correct.
And you might rather it be nuclear so it doesn't hurt the environment versus gas versus coal or some strata there, right?
We love solar power, so we think that's a great opportunity for sure.
Okay. Thank you so much. All right, Senator Huffstetler, if you'll wrap up, you got.
Mr. Chair, I had signed up.
All right, give me a minute, Chuck. If you'll defer a minute, go right ahead.
I won't keep you long. My name is Julian Bennett. My approach is economic development. I was on the Board of Invest Atlanta for 8 years, the economic development agency for Atlanta. And you've brought up this question of the data centers and their economic benefit. I would say one reason they're not in rural areas, Senator, is that they need the trunk fiber. And that, unfortunately, you're too remote from that. The question about how much property tax they pay is one that needs to be dug into, because it's not much. They get very good deals. So, for example, the Gulch developers said in a public offering statement that data centers are valued at 25% of their actual investment. That's before, that's how they're appraised. That's before the tax breaks. There's a massive metadata center, I think it's Fayette County, which arranged a pilot payment instead of paying property taxes that would be starting at $1 million a year and going to $5 million. Now, those are $1 billion, as you said, assets. They get away with some very low, they're not doubling your digest. I wanted to say, what I really came to say was that what Senator Ginn raised, and which I think is in the minds of several of you, this question about what if this demand fad fizzles. Well, last week, you guys are busy. You may not even have seen it because you've been so busy down here. DeepSeek, this little Chinese entrepreneurial group, came up with an AI substitute that can operate for 1/10 of the power required by the current technology that's going in, that's in the plans of the IRP. 1/10. So that stuff can evaporate real quick. I'm an old guy. I used to be involved in the oil majors way back. There used to be take or pay agreements. where if if as a buyer, a large oil company buying oil from a field, if they said, hey, we want you to invest in expand, you had a take or pay agreement. Now, that meant you are going to take that product, and if you don't, you're still going to pay for it. Now, I think the gentleman, totally respect his expertise. I don't have anything to show against that. But if you've got a real take or pay agreement, then we're fine. But if you don't, we're not fine, and consumers will be hit with it because Georgia Power ultimately can get their return from the ordinary small business and consumer. So the final question is, and I think you asked it, Mr. Chairman, if you're saying it's all fixed, what's the objection to Senator Hofstadter's bill? I mean, let's do belt and braces and have them both. Thank you very much.
Renee, thank you for coming. It's valuable to us to have citizens. You're here on your own behalf as a citizen of Georgia. Thank you for being here. Sorry I overlooked you. Your handwriting, you might need to work on it. I thought you had 86 instead of 34 down here on the bill. All right, Senator
All right,
Hofstadter,
thank you.
finish up
And I
your
know the majority leader wasn't here for my first comments, but I fully support these data centers coming into Georgia, as does he. He and I went to Switch in Nevada some years back together, and we're building a Switch data center in Cartersville. We've got a Microsoft center going in Rome that are paying 100% of their school taxes from day one. And we just announced that you missed the part, a 2 million square foot data center going in Rome. They do pay considerable property taxes. That's really the benefit they bring. So I do fully support them. I know there's a question about who wrote the bill. I wrote the bill with Legislative Counsel with input from the Public Service Commission. None of these people saw this bill before it was dropped. I wanted to get the one from South Carolina, but I got tired of waiting on trying to get the one they were doing and went ahead without them. And we will be meeting to go over this. Some of the issues out there is, the two things I hear most from everybody right now are property taxes and electricity bills. And I know the PSC would like to keep the legislature out of this, but I think this is just too huge of an issue for us not to make sure we're taking care of the citizens' own. And I think it is a great first step that has gone on. I think the PSC has started realizing they can't keep putting this on the consumers, as well as Georgia Power. But some of the concerns I have, and I'm meeting with them next week when we go over this, is it says the company, they talk about the Georgia Power as a company in this, and they say the company may require additional terms, longer term of contract when the company deems it appropriate. So the rule change doesn't mandate or require them to impose any additional contract terms on a new loads company. It gives them complete discretion to do so. You get down to that ruling, paragraph D, subparagraph 213.14. Once again, the company has discretionary deemed appropriate by the company. Subparagraph 13, the company may require additional performance and credit provision it deems appropriate. Paragraph 14 may be required and allows the company complete latitude. So none of those impose any kind of a mandate, and that is some of my concern, is that we seem to be working in the right direction, but we need to make sure when maybe those PSC commissioners are gone and we're gone that we've got stuff in place that protects everybody on this. I can provide data on the kilowatt, but I know we get a 13.6 cents statement from them, and that doesn't include, as Chairman Albers pointed out, all the costs. I have not seen a consumer bill when you add it up that's not below 20 cents kilowatt. And yeah, we do have hot weather, and so does Arizona and Texas and a lot of other places, and I'll be glad to provide data related to that.
So what's the goal you're trying to accomplish with this legislation?
I want to make sure we've got legislation in place that assures that our consumers don't pay the cost of these data centers. And I know it sounds like we're singling them out, but I think you heard the testimony that 80% of the growth is going to come from them, and I think we have to do this. And I think we're all, Georgia Power, the Public Service Commission, the data centers, myself, I think we all are kind of looking at the same goals. It's just making sure that we've got everything tightened up to where we do protect the consumers of Georgia.
Thank you, Senator. All right, before you step down, you agree this bill's not ready for action?
I like the bill as it is. I like the language in it, but.
Well, you said you're meeting with Public
But,
Service
well,
Commission next
I'm
week.
meeting with them and getting input from them.
Okay.
You're correct.
So you think we might ought to, let's smoke this over for a day or so,
I
a
think
week
you
or two?
you said earlier today this was a hearing only, and I understand
Got
that.
it.
And I think that's one of the reasons the PSC didn't testify and want to meet and look at it. So I think it's good, but I'm going to listen to them.
All right, and I think that's good legislating. So when you are through hearing from them, if they give you reasons you think you ought to change or improve this bill, let me know, and then we'll discuss another hearing to take action if you decide you want to move forward. Fair enough?
Fair enough. Thank
All
you,
right,
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Anavitarte. Senate Bill 86. If any of you are here for the automobile dealers bill, I don't see Bill Morey. It has dawned on me now, we're not going to get to you today. We got some itchy people here ready to get home, so we're going to hear this one. We will hear that bill on Tuesday. But stick around, you might learn something about alcohol.
Chairman, I'm
Senator
going
Anavitarte.
Chairman, if you don't mind, I'm going to invite Jeremy Collins. up. Is that okay?
Absolutely, that'd be fine.
Come on. I know it's late. I'm going to kind of go through this as quick as I can. 5 minutes? Okay. It's a good test, Senator. I like that standard, though. Hopefully this will be a little more fun. I don't know. I heard that, leader. That's on the record. So Senate Bill 86, language in this bill addresses industry concerns by placing a safeguard on the pricing of retail-backed incentives. Currently, all premises alcohol retailers in Georgia may not provide their customers with incentives that offer discounts on beer, wine, distilled spirits, while still selling those products above cost. Retailers are free to adjust their prices so long as the adjusted price does not fall below the actual retail cost. This costs Georgians money and does not allow consumers to maximize their household budget. The lack of retail incentives serves no meaningful regulatory purpose and does not promote the public interest. It deprives a brick-and-mortar retailer in Georgia, already under competitive pressure from direct wine shipments and lower prices offered in stores located in bordering states, from a meaningful way to drive businesses to their establishments and, more importantly, reward loyal customers. States across the United States allow for the use of retail-backed coupons for beer, wine, and distilled spirits. We see that in Florida, we've seen it in Tennessee, we see it in South Carolina, and we all know Alabama's a special control state. They don't do anything. Sorry, Alabama. Senate Bill 86, if you look at lines 26 through 28, would allow Georgians the issuance of retail-backed incentives as a way of offering meaningful benefits to customers while maintaining the policy requiring retailers to sell products at or above cost. There have been significant increases of the use of digital coupons since the pandemic, and that's continued on. Incentives are critical to building customer trust and developing a relationship based on value. Incentives help customers make better use of their own discretionary entertainment grocery budget, especially as we see high costs right now with inflation and by other means, including property taxes. Referring to line 19, this line was added to the legislation last year at the request of the alcohol groups to ensure further protection of the industry, so we came back with that. Tastings conducted by retailers are currently allowed in Georgia, and this bill expands the consumer-centric practice increasing it from 52 to 104 over the course of a year. We have worked in good faith to address the concerns that were brought to us regarding the legislation. My goal is to improve this bill in good faith as it moves through this process. The improvements and concerns that have been addressed are before you in the committee. The Hospitality Coalition, in an effort to provide visitors with additional experiences, support local business, promote tourism of this bill. It's supported by the Georgia Association of Convention and Visitors Bureau, Georgia Retailers, the Georgia Restaurant Association, and the Hotel and Lodging Association also. Basically, Mr. Chairman, thank you. I'll wrap up and basically just say in a nutshell, in terms of the coupon part, which I know is probably where we're going to spend a lot of time, and I know there's concerns or opposition from my friends in the alcohol industry. This is no different than any other coupon you may get, whether you go to Publix or Kroger or Goodyear or any other retailer where, you're using an app or you're getting a flyer from their store and asking for a consumer, getting a consumer discount in that weekly ad. So I just ask that this be given fair consideration to the consumers that are asking for this. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any questions for Senator Anna Vitarte? Senator Dolezal, you're recognized. You'll be next.
I want to ask about your last statement that's not any different. It actually is different in that this would regulate that it can't be below the cost, so it technically is more restrictive than what Costco or Kroger or Publix can do as it relates to typical
We can make it
consumer
less.
products,
We can make
correct?
it less restrictive.
Well, that's what I'm saying. You
Yeah,
said
I'm
it
sorry.
actually, you have a guardrail around that it's a little bit
Right.
different. I just want to call that out.
That's fair.
What I'm curious about, I know, Jeremy, your client's Total Wine. Is there buying power that they have that allows their cost to be lower than a mom and pop shop, such that going back to what I said, if it's referencing their cost, is their cost for a bottle regulated in any way, or can it be lower than what somebody else might pay at a mom and pop that's down the street?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Jeremy Collins. I'm here representing Total Wine & More. Wanted to make sure that was clear. Your question, I think, is different than what this does, because this is a coupon that anybody can, any business can offer. So businesses buy, let's just say there's a bottle of alcohol for $15 and you sell it for $20. I'm making that up. You can offer this coupon, $5 off for $15. That's the same for the big box stores. Total Wine, we've been called a lot of things.
Right, but you're referencing the retail, which the such retailer dealer paid on line 27. That's your floor.
Yeah,
Is that floor universal, or is that floor for larger buyers, of which I would assume your client is one? Is that floor different? If I buy a bottle of Tito's and I own a single shop, am I paying the same price for the bottle of Tito's at wholesale as you are?
I don't know that question, but I know that this language is already in place and it's here it's already in Georgia statute or law. So we put it in there to highlight the fact that a bigger store with more purchasing power, to your point, cannot come in and undercut a smaller store. An owner that has one or two of your local smaller shops, you can't have somebody larger like Total Wine come in and undercut them to take the loss because they might have more resources, to take that loss to force a smaller entity out of business. This is already in play, or this is already in effect in Georgia, and it's in here to highlight, it's just to highlight it to the body that you cannot come in and do what some are saying, is drive the price lower than what the retailer buys it for.
Okay, thank you.
I don't think I 100% answered your question. I believe that this is a hearing only. I will follow up with
We
you.
can chat offline. I'd be happy to do that.
That's a good question.
Senator Harbison, did you have a question?
Yes.
You got it? Okay. Other questions for Senator Anna Vitarte? Mr. Collins, you were the first signed up to speak, and since you're sitting here, do you have anything else you'd like to add about the bill?
I know that hour's late. I've heard a lot of things about Total Wine over the last few years, so I think I'll try to speak a little bit to get in front of some folks that are going to talk behind me. Total Wine they have 5 stores in Georgia. Each store, each store has 50 to 75 employees. They're well trained, and it's a brick and mortar store. They pay taxes. They're not fly by night, just like other retailers. They participate in the community with charitable organization, through philanthropy and through charity. The numbers that I have is they've given over $1.6 million in their local communities. So they are not coming in to take out smaller businesses. That's a false narrative that I repeatedly hear. The way that this bill was constructed was to highlight the price protection, to make sure it's a level playing field. As Senator Anna Vitarte mentioned before, there was a line in there that said it couldn't be I don't see it in front of me, but you couldn't coupon a particular brand. There was a sense of concern that you could take, like, say for Costco, a Kirkland brand that somebody else doesn't have, and then you could offer a rebate or a coupon on that, and that would be a disadvantage. That is my understanding. That's why Senator Anaparty put that in the bill last year, to alleviate that concern from the industry. I will note this committee is largely the same, but there are some new members on it. This committee did pass out that coupon language last year verbatim. Nothing's changed on that for the members that are here right now. It did add the tastings from 52 to 104, and I'm happy to answer any questions you have. I haven't gotten many questions. I think I've talked to most of you, or if not myself, somebody else, before this meeting. I'm happy to answer any questions. I know the hour's late.
Two quick questions.
I recognize my vice chairman, Senator Summers. Sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Two quick questions.
Yes, two quick questions. Is Total Wine only in Georgia?
No, that's a good question. I've got all these notes in front of me. They are in 29 different states. And I do want to say something that just jogged my memory when you asked that question. The border states, as Senator Anaparty mentioned, have coupons. Tennessee just changed it last year to allow coupons. The sky's not falling in Tennessee. The sky's not falling in the 29 other states. I think 22 of those 29, I'd have to look at my notes, have a coupon and a rebate option. They all have the three-tier system, to my knowledge. Well, some might be controlled states, but this doesn't affect the three-tier system. Some people are talking about that. That's a very protective system here, and I understand that. My client understands that. They're not trying to disrupt that. This in no way affects the three-tier system. Tennessee's not falling, and that was just last year. So I do want to, so yes, we're there in 29 states, and I believe Florida and South Carolina allow it, as Senator Anaparty said, and Tennessee just passed it, or just allowed it last year.
Last question. Yeah. Why would retailers or wholesalers, however you want to classify it, what is their argument against you doing this? Where do you feel their argument is against the coupons?
I've asked that question, and I don't think there is a good argument. Of course, they'll come up here and they'll have an argument that the members of the committee can hear from, but there's not a good argument. Why should the customer be punished? I've never used it. There's apps now that you can download, and then you can get rebates and coupons from apps. So you have an app, and then you have the manufacturer. You have you got all these people that can offer a discount or a rebate, but you don't have the brick and mortar that's in the community. I can only speak for us. That has already given over $1.6 million in the last 7 or 8 years they've been here into their communities. They pay taxes. It's not a fly-by-night. I don't understand the argument, because the protections are in there, like I previously mentioned. You're not able to drive out smaller businesses if you're a larger store. It's simply, and if you do that, I hope the Department of Revenue or the enforcement agency comes after you and shuts you down.
Yeah, and let me add one thing real quick, if I may, Mr. Chairman, to that, and I've told our friends in the alcohol industry, those stores or shops, their members, even in my part of the state or even in Metro Atlanta, those owners I know, they don't say to me when you walk in the store or when you're talking to them, like, coupons is putting me under. Coupons is taking my business away. What's taking their business away, and it's a local issue, is the number of licenses, alcohol licenses, that whether you're Cobb County or Gwinnett County or Paulding County or other places, as more stores are popping up in terms of the geography of where these stores are, those stores are feeling that pressure. They're feeling those consumers going to somewhere else or forcing a business out of place because of the pricing competition. I know these businesses are operating on very slim margins already as it is, to stay open. And I know that, if we read recent articles in the Wall Street Journal and other places in terms of what's going on in the craft industry of bourbon, whiskey, and all these other things, they're starting to suffer because of consumer habits, inflation, national issues going on. So I don't know that coupons is going to, dramatically change kind of, the habits of consumers to basically wipe away. And I know there's concern about, you give them a foot, you give them a mile. But I think with the growth we're seeing, I think that's just not realistic long term.
You know why we have a statutory prohibition against them now?
Senator, Mr. Chairman, Senator Anavartati looked into that this session, or I'm sorry, in the off year, so in the summer, after this committee passed the coupon legislation last year with the Department of Revenue, and asked that question and received an answer. We have that. We can provide it to members. It is not a law. It is a rule, and that rule came into place in 1997. I can meet with you guys or the members of this committee individually, but he, in talking with him over the summer and the fall, did not want to waste this committee's time or the Rules Committee or the floor's time if he could fix it or he could accomplish what he wanted to accomplish outside of the legislative session. And so it is, we have the response, and it is not a law. It is just a rule.
Okay. All right, I'm going to recognize Senator Rhett first, and then you,
Thank you,
Senator
Mr. Chairman. Did y'all bring any sample coupons we can use on the way home today?
If you want to pass it, we can work on it. I do have examples of coupons that have been used in other states. If there was questions, there was some questions from a few members about who's doing the physical coupons, who's mailing them. Well, I get those at my house. I get them for tree services and all sorts of stuff. We are moving away from that, especially during COVID. It really ramped up, like at least in the alcohol industry. Most of them, it's mostly digital now. Like everything else has moved that way, but it really increased during the COVID pandemic. And we did bring some of our examples in some other states, some coupons, if anybody would like to see it. But it's digital now. So, but that was a question that we did hear.
Why not just have a lower price? Why not just have a sale? Instead of me having to go through the hassle of mailing a coupon or whatever and getting my money back, why don't you just say, we got Tito's on sale today, $3 off?
Well, we can't do that, sir.
You can't have a sale?
Whenever you come into, my understanding, whenever you come in and you see something on sale or you see a rebate, that's coming from the manufacturers. The retailer who owns the store or rents the store, or owns the business, who's paying taxes, who's in that community. For us, like I said before, we participate in charitable and philanthropy in our areas. We're not allowed to do that. So the customer, think about even with the tastings, the customer. Why should the customer be punished when from the retailer? The retailer wants people in the stores. They want more taste. They want foot traffic. They want to treat they want to build a relationship, whether it's a mom and pop, whether it's Total Wine. Like, you want to have that relationship, no matter what, what business whatever the business's name. So we would love to have that opportunity, sir.
All right, Senator Brass, you recognize for a question.
Well, Mr. Chairman, you kind of hit the nail on the head for me. I'm trying to get I don't understand the big deal on either side of this one, to be honest with you. Other than, I know we're going to hear from Mike Griffin, and discounting alcohol would be a bad idea, and I understand that. I understand where he's coming from on that. But to the chairman's point, why could you not just say, what if it's not even a sale? Why can't you just say, we sell Tito's at $12 a fifth, or whatever the cost is plus whatever you're trying to do? Why? I don't understand, especially if you've got buying power that some of these mom and pops don't have. Like, I don't understand the point of a coupon and the fact that we keep hearing that. We've heard this now for, you said 8 years, I think. I'm trying to get my head around what's so important about this coupon that you can't just say, we sell it at this. And then people are going to look it up and say, all right, well, mom and pop's selling it $1 more. I'm going to you guys. And you've only got two stores, liquor stores in the state at max.
Yes.
So
yes, Senator.
Why? I just can't get my head around the how this coupon is going to drive all this extra foot traffic into these stores. And I've done retail. I understand the value of foot traffic. That's very important. That's why your location matters. That's why you got to have the tastings are important. So I get all that. I don't get the coupon and the importance of it and why it's so controversial. nobody's been able to explain on either side the harm of, other than Mike Griffin, he's been very clear on his. And so I understand where he's coming from. I don't understand where Total Wine's coming from and on how this drives foot traffic, because I keep going back to the point of the chairman over there. If I want foot traffic, I'm gonna find something that somebody wants, and I'm gonna market it that I sell it cheaper than someone else, and that's gonna drive foot traffic. So, and then on the flip side, I don't understand how a little coupon's gonna totally kill all these other businesses. So I don't know. Everybody's got work to do on me.
Chairman Brass, does your wife use coupons when she shops, or do you shop? Who does the shopping in your house?
I don't know.
You don't know? That may be part of the problem.
Honest answer.
I just show up and things are there.
Maybe I should not have asked that question.
I've given
All
my
right.
wife coupons, but she's yet to cash
All
them.
right.
Senator Albers, you're recognized for a
It's a
question.
hard act to follow, Mr. Chairman. You know, honestly, this is silly. I mean, we're all free market people. We live in capitalism. Can you imagine the founding fathers of Georgia when they're creating the Constitution saying we ought to cherry pick on one industry and tell them they can't use a coupon? I mean, let's just have some basic logic and common sense on this. Why the heck are we preventing a business from doing a different marketing technique to help grow their small business or their large business? And not give
Excellent
them the opportunity?
segue. Stony McGill, you're next.
Well, I did
You
have a
can
question.
start by answering, oh, you got
I did
another
have a
question? I thought that was it. You
Well,
asked
I was working on my question for the author, but.
I can, Stony McGill with Georgia Alcohol Dealers Association.
Well, he's got one more question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I think for the author.
I do.
But hang on.
Chairman Anapatarte.
Yes, sir.
Although people calling you Anapatardi right now, I'm not sure what happened to your name. Question for you, is heart disease still the number one killer of people in America? Is it? Okay.
Yeah, there's a couple of things, yeah.
So my
It's
next
in the
question,
top
my
2 or
next
3.
question is, do they allow coupons for McDonald's and other places like that, that food is really bad and probably causes a lot of heart disease? Are they allowed?
Yeah, I mean, they're on, I'm sure if we polled this room, well, when we had the full room, I bet you almost everybody in here had a McDonald's app with rewards and coupons that you could go on there and pull. Okay, except for Leader Gooch, but.
He's a Dairy
All
Queen
right.
guy.
Mr. McGill.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Stony McGill with Georgia Alcohol Dealers Association. There's so many places to go. I have prepared remarks, but I think I want to just kind of shoot from the hip a little bit.
Start with the wrap-up of Senator Albert's question. Why does anybody complain? Why does the little stores that you represent have a problem with the big stores having coupons?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman.
All right.
You guys were mentioning Tito's. Tito's are not the coupons that they offer. They don't offer coupons for Tito's. It says that the products that they are offering for these coupons and I can show you very large copies of their coupons, and it's 10% off direct spirits. So they have, because they have all these stores in all these states, they have private label products. They use their coupons for their private label products. We can't get those private label products. So when those products come to the wholesaler, they ship exactly how much the Total Wines have ordered. They drop them. Sometimes they drop them. They pick them right back up on the pallets they were on, and they take them to those stores. So very typically, what they will do, they use pricing to say you can use this coupon, but you can't use it to. It doesn't affect products that end in a 7. So they'll have Tito's and Maker's Mark and all the labels and products that you know. You come to the store thinking you're going to get 10% off of whatever products they have, but then you realize in the little print down here that you can't use it with anything that ends in 7, and then you realize that they're direct spirits or their wine, and again, the stuff that ends in 7. They have their own private label stuff that most of the mom and pops can't get. And they can sell those products at a lower price than they're selling. They can, and it's selling below cost is in Title III. So that is in code. You can't sell any alcoholic beverage below cost. So the reason that we would struggle with coupons is that if we put a 20% off on all of our merchandise, then we may be in violation of the law if we sell something 20%, because markups are very, very thin in the liquor industry. Their markups on their private label stuff aren't anywhere near the markups that we put on our products. So it's comparing apples to oranges, what we're able to buy and what they're able to buy.
Go ahead with your other remarks that you've got prepared then. I got a question before you even get started there. Senator Brass, you recognize.
So I guess my question is around if they have direct label, I thought in the three-tiered system you couldn't sell your own stuff. Is that not right?
They contract with, you can contract with a distillery or a winery, and a lot of times their products look a lot like another product. They may have a product, and I'm making this name up, they may have Jack Daniels at $24.99, and then they'll have a product in a square bottle with a black label that's called Brother Jack that'll have a made-up scores on the, some wine magazine gave it a better score than Jack Daniels. So it's almost, some people call it a bait and switch type sales tactic.
Okay, so I guess going back to my question, did they just have a direct contract with that? So it's not, they're not directly connected, they're just connected through contract for direct sales. Okay,
and an independent store can do the same thing. They can go to a distillery and they can buy a single barrel of a bourbon, and they can have that as their private label. But we're not talking about tens of hundreds of thousands of cases that Total Wine's shipping all over the country.
And then they could sell
that their contract wineries and distilleries are using. So
they could turn around and sell it at whatever cost they wanted.
Well, it still has to be above the invoice price.
Right.
But the way they do it, they contract
Pretty
so
bad
that
business if you don't.
Anybody can give it away. But they basically, when they order something to come from the warehouse to come to the wholesaler, it's exactly how much is going to the Total Wine stores. And when one of our guys tries to get it, it's not available.
Okay, I got it.
Yes, sir.
Answered my question.
Senator Summers, you're recognized for a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Take yourself out of Metro Atlanta, if you will, Greater Atlanta. I'm in South Georgia. There's there's not a lot of wine, liquor stores, et cetera, in South Georgia.
Sure.
So my question is, isn't it true that if these coupons are allowed, those people, your people that you represent, would be allowed to use coupons?
We would be allowed to use coupons. Mom and pop operations typically don't have the budget that this multi-billion-dollar company that's in 29 states with hundreds of locations. The whole system of the three-tier system is set up to treat everybody equally. All products are supposed to be offered to retailers on equal terms. But when you create a deal like this where they have the opportunity to get these products that we can't get our hands on, it's not equal. So it almost creates a monopolistic scenario where that they have products that we can't get.
But if you wanted to generate foot traffic, even in small town USA, if they have a coupon, you could use the person in small town, you could use a coupon.
The reality is most of the mom and pops don't have the budget to do geofencing and those type things it's not the same as because we're not talking about print coupons as much as we were 10 years ago. We're talking about digital stuff. So if you drive by a Total Wine, they have geofencing. You might get an ad on your social media that says, "Oh, hey, you're by a Total Wine and More. Come in and get 15% off."
I still didn't get an answer. I'm sorry.
Well, yes, sir. We could use coupons. The reality is, it's not in the average mom and pop's budget to do these type expensive things to bring business in the stores.
Senator Alvers, you're recognized for a question.
Tony, let's talk about coupons for a minute, because isn't it true that there are really two methods of coupons? One is paper and one is digital. I think we can all agree to that. Isn't it true that typically when somebody does a coupon that is in paper, whether they use the local newspaper or other form, it's like anything else. They contract for their business and they create an image usually through that newspaper or that party, and they put in, "Hey, come to my business location," or "Here is a coupon for it." It's actually very simple, and isn't it further true that that's exactly how digital ads work now, that there's probably 10,000 companies I could find in a few minutes on my phone that do exactly what you're saying at a very low cost now and target it, and it's made so all consumers, no matter what their industry is, can use digital projects. In fact, it's been found that digital coupons cost the business owners a fraction of what paper coupons do.
I'm sure.
Okay, so getting back to that, then the playing field is in fact level. So when we say things that they're going to have this extraordinary cost and a small player versus a big player, that's not factually accurate. They all actually have the same playing field. In fact, I could argue we give more opportunities to small ones. But I think it also gets back to the fact of why are we trying to jump in front of businesses in whatever marketing choices that they want? Are we not a free market capitalist society?
Well, there's a lot of things in the alcohol industry that I wouldn't consider a free market.
You're right. We can work on changing those too.
I understand. And to answer your question about the forefathers, I think if you look at the state seal, you'll see moderation is one of the three things. And I think trying to find the lowest price in alcohol is not necessarily meeting the state seal, the original moderation part of that state seal. So
I appreciate it. We won't get for tit for tat, but I'd also say wisdom would say they'd use some good logic.
Yes, sir.
Other comments? We'll let you get back on track now.
Okay, thank you so much. And again, so my members, I represent 400 around the state. Nobody, we survey our members. Nobody wants none of our guys want to do coupons. It's partially because we know we'll be at a competitive disadvantage, the small guy to the big guy, and so that's a big part of it. And so I'm going to maintain my position of I've originally been that I'm 100% against, and the members that I represent, the Georgia-owned businesses that I represent, are against these coupons, and it hurts mom and pop, and I'll stand by that statement. As long as I'm here in the Capitol. To the second part of the bill, the wine taste or the in-store alcohol tasting, we are okay with expanding the number. It fits their business model better than it does ours because again they have more capital to give away product, to try to bring people in the store, to advertise, to get people in the store. But about half of my stores do it. We have increased liquor liability for those stores that are doing it. That was one of my arguments when the original bill was dealing with tastings came up. So a lot of our folks have to have riders on their insurance saying that they won't do in-store tastings. So again, this does divide us a little bit between the winners and the losers, the big and the small. And so, but we're okay with the concept of expanding the number of tastings. But I do think the fallacy in the first time the legislation was passed was there is a reporting requirement in Title III that requires that the retailer report, and they report that to the local government authority. I spoke to revenue agents. I spoke to the revenue department here, and it would be very helpful if we change this legislation to add the reporting to go to the revenue department. That way, when a revenue agent walks into a store, they've got a tasting going on, and if we're going to limit the number of hours to the amount of alcohol that can be served, they can go in, revenue can go in, they can make sure these tastings are going on correctly. I haven't gotten any pushback from the revenue department. I don't know where Total stands on that, but that just cleans things up for everybody. And we're not opposing the expansion of the tastings, but we would like that element to go back to the revenue department and get a little bit more uniformity and help with enforcement of those stores that are breaking the law when they do these tastings.
They're enforcing it, they're just not getting notified in advance of a tasting, is what you're saying.
Yes, sir.
Might help their enforcement if you had to advise them before you had a tasting.
That's correct,
Okay.
yes, sir.
Mike Griffith, come give us your 2 cents.
Thank y'all for your time.
Thank you, Mr. McGill. Only got one more, everybody just hang tight.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm just going to let Senator Brass come testify for me.
He's good. He's good.
My name is Mike Griffin, Public Affairs Representative of the Georgia Baptist Mission Board, and we certainly oppose the legislation. We passed a resolution a number of years ago, 2021, entitled The Impact of Alcohol on Public Health and Safety. And there is a reason why it's not considered to be other things that you're selling. because if you go back a number of years ago in the Washington Post, it said alcohol is still the deadliest drug in the United States, and it's not even close. And I mean, I can give you enough data to choke a horse here on the fact that it is not the same thing as drinking a Diet Coke that I just got out of the chairman's office a while ago. And there's a reason why y'all are not all sitting here drinking a Budweiser while you're enjoying this committee. Well, because Mike Griffin's here. But other than that, it's alcohol, and it needs to be greater restricted, or that's why it has greater restrictions. Matter of fact, if you can go back to let's see, I guess it was 1945, that the Supreme Court here in the state of Georgia called it the evil influences of alcohol. Okay, this is not getting a Big Mac. I don't know if anybody's ever had a DUI on Big Macs. I mean, I just don't know that you're dealing with the same issue. Somebody beat up somebody one night. Why? I ate 5 Big Macs and I couldn't control myself anymore. It's just not the same. I recognize Senator Albert's trying to, I know he wants to have a level playing field. And if you get it level, you'll realize that this is not the same commodity that you're buying somewhere else. And again, as it has been said before, it's considered to be a drug even. That's why you want greater restrictions on it. And also, I've seen data that's come from the federal government. It doesn't say anything about the coupons, but it does say that availability equals sales. Sales equals consumption, and the more you consume is the greater potential of problems. So I would assume that the industry would not be for coupons if it was going to hurt their sales. And I'm assuming that if it's going to help sales, it's going to help more of it being bought. And again, I'm not against you having the right to buy the alcohol, and if you want to buy more of it, I think that's up to you. But I think if we increase the accessibility, it increases the potential of problems. And you and I know there's a lot of societal ills that we have in this country today that would not be helped if more alcohol was consumed. Even the CDC just came out about the dangers regarding cancer now related to alcohol. But again, it's your right to be able to drink that if you want to. I do believe that. But I'm just concerned that we might make, again, like I talk on the gambling, you might be throwing a little gasoline on a fire here to be careful of. But anyway, we do respect Senator Advocate, and but this is just something that we're concerned about.
Thank you
And
so much
thank you,
for
Mr.
sharing
Chairman.
with us. I can't tell if it's Bob or Rob Brewer.
It's Bob.
Bob, good to see you. I've been sitting here looking at you today wondering who is that nice-looking gentleman? Are you
very
just
kind.
a spectator? Did you have something to contribute? Let's introduce
Well,
yourself.
I like to think I have something to contribute here. Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for members of the committee for letting me speak to you here today. My name is Dr. Robert Brewer, formal name, and I am a retired captain of the U.S. Public Health Service and the former director of the alcohol program at the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. I'm here to testify against Senate Bill 86, and I am representing myself here in doing that. There are 3 key points that I'd like to make today. The first is that excessive drinking is a huge public health problem in Georgia. The second is that the price of alcohol has a strong effect on alcohol consumption. And the third is that you can help prevent alcohol-related harm due to excessive drinking by voting against this bill. Excessive drinking, including binge drinking and underage drinking, kills about 5,200 Georgians each year, shortening the lives of those who die by an average of 25 years. That's because a lot of those deaths involve working-age adults and therefore has a direct impact on productivity in our state as well. Excessive drinking is also strongly associated with many health and social problems, including high blood pressure, breast, colon, and other cancers, as was mentioned previously, unintended pregnancy, HIV, STDs, violence, motor vehicle crashes, and opioid overdoses, among others. You wouldn't say that of many other products. That's quite a track record that alcohol has, particularly when consumed excessively, which is what we're concerned about. It's also very expensive. In 2010, excessive drinking cost Georgians $6.9 billion, or about $2.12 per drink, including $2.8 billion, or about 86 cents per drink in government-funded health care and criminal justice expenses. So again, one of the differences between alcohol and other products is it has a very high social cost, again, particularly when it's consumed to excess. And we know alcohol consumption is very sensitive to price, and that brings us to this bill. Increasing the price of alcohol by 10% would be expected to decrease alcohol consumption by about 7%. Conversely, decreasing the price of alcohol would be expected to increase consumption by about the same amount, and this bill is designed to do exactly that. In fact, we may already be discounting the price of alcohol in Georgia because we haven't increased alcohol taxes in over 40 years. As a result, alcohol excise taxes in Georgia declined by 42% from 1991 to 2015 due to inflation, keeping the retail price of alcohol lower than it would be if these taxes were increased. The good news, again, is that you can do something about this by voting against Senate Bill 86, thereby avoiding further reductions in the retail price of alcohol and protecting taxpayers from having to pick up the tab for alcohol-related harms caused by excessive drinking. We simply can't afford to make alcohol cheaper than it already is in Georgia and further risk the health and safety of all Georgians as a result. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Martin Smith, I saw you just walk in. You weren't signed up, but you generally have a viewpoint on this, and we're kind of trying to wrap up our public comments today before taking action. Not today. Do you got anything you want to add? You may not, but if you do, keep it to a couple minutes, and then we'll be wrapped up for the day.
Okay. Thank you. And by the way, I have copies of my testimony if you want those. Page has those.
If you've given them the page, we'll have them in our folders next week. Thank you for taking the effort to be here.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'm Martin Smith. I'm the Executive Director of the Georgia Beer Wholesalers Association. We represent the distributors in Georgia who provide and sell the product to all the retailers across the state, whether it's the large or the small retailers. My first statement is that, as Stoney has said, that their membership, his membership, represent the majority of the liquor stores, package stores throughout our state. And they're our retail partners, as all other retail locations are our partners. But in understanding to some questions that were earlier asked about the pricing and the ability to get something at a discounted price, in the alcohol sales, yes, everything has to be made available to all retailers at the same opportunity. However, there are quantity discounts that are made available, and the larger stores, package stores, retail outlets have the ability and purchasing power to buy a product that ultimately makes it cheaper for them than it would for the smaller guys. The typical person that Stoney represents, they don't have the purchasing power that the larger boxes have. So yes, a bottle of whatever you're buying would be at a significantly different price because of the quantity discounts that's made available to everybody, but only the ones who have that purchasing power to do it have availability to it in real life. So being able to make that discount at one of Stoney's stores is not as easily made as somebody who bought it at a much cheaper price because of that purchasing power. In addition to, as he alluded to, some of the private labels, that's worked out with those manufacturers again that help supplement that. Again, because of that purchasing power, they have access to that his smaller members do not. All of that being said, we stand with our members, our retail partners, and listening to what helps their businesses. And when this particular part, the component about the coupons, puts very few large retailers at a huge advantage over the mom and pops that make up the majority of our retail partners in the package store side, we stand with our partners.
Senator Albers, you're recognized for a question, and then Senator Brass will be next.
Thank you. Got ahead of you this time. Martin, question for you. You talked about the larger stores versus the smaller ones. If we could draw a parallel, wouldn't it be true that we should never have Home Depot come to Georgia then, because it put out all those smaller mom and pop hardware stores out of business?
I mean, I could sing a local hero song about it, but I think I'm not saying that we should keep them from coming. It's just that in our particular world on the alcohol side, it puts them at a strategic advantage in this particular case.
But wouldn't Home Depot be at a strategic advantage because they can buy in larger quantities and they can do the exact same things as any other large company? For that fact, maybe we should do the same at Walmart.
You know, my
Should we ban
expertise
Walmarts?
isn't on the traditional retail, and we're in a heavily regulated industry because alcohol is different, and it's the only one that has 2 U.S. constitutional amendments that deal with alcohol. There's nothing else in our Constitution that has 2 different amendments that deal with it.
I'm glad they got it right in the second one. I guess my question is, you kept talking about it's all about purchasing power, and there's a large business and a small business. That would be not unique to any industry. It would be the same if we talked about a larger business like a Home Depot, a pride and joy of our state, or a Walmart or anybody else. If we believe in basic capitalism and free markets, why are we telling one they just can't be able to market their business the whole way? It just doesn't have any logic, common sense.
Well, I think it kind of goes to the name of this committee. It's about the regulated industries. We're not, all of the industries that y'all discuss in here are different than just the general run-of-the-mill widgets operations that are out there. And that's unique to this, the stuff that this committee listens to. And it's unique to our industry because it is regulated for very good reasons.
Senator Brass.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Since this is hearing only, I'm going to throw out a question for both sides to think about, and don't expect an answer at this time, certainly. Oftentimes we're trying to split the baby up here. And from hearing them from both sides, would it not be fair if the bill read you could do coupons but not on private label to where everyone had the same opportunities? To me, that would make sense for both sides, but y'all can talk offline and work that out. Mr. Chairman, I've got a question, I think, for you. Would it be appropriate for us to ask the Department of Revenue for a reason or an intent behind that rule, that reg change in 1997, I believe, is what they said?
That's a great suggestion.
'Cause I'd
I'll
be
reach out
curious.
to them and do that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll disseminate that amongst members, but yeah, it is, and that's, like the Public Service Commission was here for the previous bill. We love to hear from government impacted by these. They weren't yet prepared because they had continuing dialogue going on with Hufstedler.
Right.
We'll reach out to them, or maybe you have that information for us, Senator Anna Vitarte. And we traditionally allow the sponsor to have wrap-up comments, or I'm not cutting you off, Mr. Smith.
No,
but
sir,
if
that's
you're-
all.
but
Thank you.
I'll let you close out, then we'll all head home for the weekend.
So I just want to fact check a couple of things real quick. So just to be very clear, line 19 of the bill specifically says such discount is not specific to any particular brand of alcoholic beverages. So there's no, playing favorites. The other thing I want to fact check too, for Mr. Collins' client, is that they do not have a Total Wine private label. That is just not correct. If there is one, I would like for someone to bring that bottle here. They could show it to us. If I'm misspoken or miseducated on that, I'll own that. But my understanding is that is just not true. Kind of weaving into that, I think there is a conflation between what's the difference between wine direct and spirit direct. Maybe in that world of private label, but I think in terms of what we're talking about specifically, this retailer coupon, that's not true. And then finally, all I'm going to say is at the end of the day, and I think, our pastor here even kind of said it, is that I don't think it's the government's job to basically, decide, profit margins for whether you're a large business or small business. I think at the end of the day, that's up to the consumer of what they want to buy if we're going to talk about free enterprise. So just wanted to close with that. And we will double check what the homework we already did over the last few months, Chairman Brass's question with the department, see if there's anything missing. But I think we have some of that. I'll get it to you.
When you're checking that, will you also check on coupons from national labels? In doing my homework for this committee only, not for personal consumption, I've been to a couple of liquor stores. A lot of them will have a tag hanging on the top of the bottle. You mail it back into
That's right.
Brown-Forman and you get $5 back. Those are obviously legal because everybody's doing them. Why is
Especially with the
there,
crafts.
what's the distinction between being allowed to do that if it's the manufacturer that mails you back the money versus the retailer?
Got it.
I can't sort
That's
that
a
through
great
my
question.
mind why it should make a difference. Because I'm looking at my three-tier people thinking, man, y'all are getting ripped off on that. The wholesaler, do you get a cut of that or not? Maybe it increases your sales and you do, but we'll see. Thank you, everybody, for being
Thank
here,
you.
especially late. I'm sorry I kept you so late, but this is some complex information. Yeah. We're adjourned.